Hi, habari gani, Kwanzaa. What's up, Kwanzaa? And in talking about this African American holiday, I'm a food historian. And so for me, it's all about the food. Now, one of the ways that I express myself through the food of the holiday is the way I create my basket, or in this case, my bowl full of mzeo, or fruits and vegetables. I use all sorts of things. Kwanzaa is derived from a harvest festival, and so what better to talk about food than the harvest? What better way to talk about it? I use things from the old world, the motherland, Africa. I use things from all around the world in my Kwanzaa setup. So let me take you on a little tour of my Kwanzaa world. I have, first of all, I start with a bowl. I don't start with a cornucopia. I don't really use a basket. This is a bowl that I bought on the African continent at some point, and I only use it really once a year. I love my bowl because I can feel it as I hold it, as I touch it, as I set things up. I feel where the axe went as the bowl was made. I have a friend who is an anthropologist who said, bowls this big are becoming rare because trees are no longer this big. So I treasure my bowl. I've got another one that's even larger, but this is the one that I bring out periodically once a year for Kwanzaa. And then I fill my bowl. I fill my bowl with many different things. I fill it with fruit, I fill it with vegetables. I use things that mean something to me personally. I use limes because when I was traveling in the Caribbean, I used to have a lot of beverages that included limes, whether it was simply a limeade or a tea punch. Limes actually, though, strangely enough, originate in Indonesia or in China. We're not sure absolutely, but we think that's the point of origin. Other citrus fruits, which may come from Asia, including always, if I can find one, a satsuma, because satsumas are a fruit that I first learned about when I bought a house in New Orleans. I have pomegranates. Pomegranates, in my mind, are connected with the Middle East because they're so prevalent in the food of that area. And I also like the way that they represent many different things. Those seeds, if we look at those seeds, they represent many, 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 many different things that come together. Um, I have the oops, I use the corn traditionally. It's supposed to represent every child in the household, but I have no children. I put out 3 years because, as we all know, three is a magic number. So three is a good number to have. I have also, but in my basket, grapes. Grapes originated probably in the Caucasus region, and so I use grapes in that to talk about, first of all, my love of wine, but also to talk about another world, the whole idea of the world of viticulture. I have pears and apples that represent Northern European fruits for me, and I have other things. Underneath, hiding down here, I have a piece of yucca. Yucca or manioc is New World. It is one of those things that is definitely rooted to this place where we are, this so-called New World. I have yam, true yam. We have confusion in this country about what is a yam. On the other side from the yam, usually I have a sweet potato, but I have a smaller one here so I can point out the difference. This is a sweet potato. This one that I'm showing right here is a sweet potato. And this is a yam. Okay, they look very different. You can have sweet potatoes with white insides. You can have yams with purple insides, but they have a different taste. The yam tastes more like a white potato, or an Irish potato, as some people would call them. Although potatoes certainly didn't originate in Ireland. You have the yams. Yams are old world. They probably come from the African continent, may come from other places, possibly China, but they are old world. Sweet potatoes are new world. So just remember, this is a yam, this is a sweet potato. So we've got a difference there. I have other things that I add. I add peanuts. I add peanuts because peanuts can be a confusing thing for people. Many people in North America think that peanuts came from Africa. They didn't. They actually came from the Americas. They went to Africa early on and then came back to North America via the slave trade, which is why people think of them as being African in origin. But not only did they come back to North America, they came back with various words for them. Nguba, a word for the peanut in one of the Bantu languages, translates to our goobers. So if you've ever had that box of candy called goobers that are chocolate covered peanuts, or if you've sung the song Eating Goober Peas, you're actually referring to an Africanism. That word goober is just a deformation, a reorganizing, another way of dealing with that Bantu language term nguba, meaning peanut. If you're from Jamaica, you may have had a pinda cake or pinda. Pinda comes from mapinda, another word for this nut in one of the African languages from Central Africa. I also had some sorrel. We'll talk about that later on in the week. Now, I first of all need to clarify there is a green French leaf that is also known as sorrel. This is called sorrel in Jamaica, but it is also called roselle, and it is a hibiscus relative. In Senegal, it's called bissap rouge. In Egypt, it's called karkade, and it makes a beverage. It makes a wonderful reddish, pinkish beverage that is a traditional drink in the English speaking Caribbean. Many people will mix their sorrel, well, they'll infuse the sorrel pods, and it really does look a little bit like a pod, although it is the seed or the seed pod, not even the seed pod, but I don't know the botanical term, but it is the downside of the plant. And you can buy it fresh if you live in a Caribbean neighborhood around Christmas time, but you can buy it dried almost all year round. And it is usually infused somewhat like a tea. It's actually what makes red zinger red, but it's infused like a tea with cinnamon and cloves and sometimes a little nutmeg and sugar. And then that infusion can be either consumed by itself as a lovely red beverage, or it can be mixed with rum, which is the way it's served for the holiday. And we'll have a recipe for that and talk about that a little later in the week. Lastly, well, not quite lastly, almost lastly, I include black-eyed peas. Any African American knows that it's not New Year's Day unless you've had your black-eyed peas and rice. And if you haven't had your black-eyed peas and rice, you hope it's not New Year's Day because the black-eyed peas are for luck. So I add them to my Kwanzaa basket for luck, but also for continuity and for tradition, because the black-eyed pea is a legume that originated on the African continent. And so it is another thing that connects us. Now, what I don't have in my basket today, but what I hopefully will have before the week is out, is the thing that to me connects us most profoundly with Africa, and that would be okra. Okra originates on the continent, and I have said that wherever it points its little green nose, the continent has been. So we have a little bit of all of these things that make up my Kwanzaa setup. But I think what everyone can and perhaps should do is come up with a Kwanzaa setup that works for you. I use these things because they have meaning to me. What has meaning to you? It might be apricots. It might be peaches. It might be cherries. It might be oranges. I mean, sometimes I have an orange because my mother grew up telling me tales of how she would always treasure the orange that came in the toe of her Christmas stocking. Oranges used to be very precious because they were citrus fruits. They came from the South. They weren't common, but they would show up at Christmas time, and you would occasionally, if you were really lucky, find one in the toe of your Christmas stocking. So I put an orange in sometimes for my mother, and maybe by tomorrow I'll have that orange in here for my mother, along with the okra to represent our connections. But all of these things are part of who we are. I use these things to represent who I am. You should use yours to represent who you are. And every night of the Kwanzaa holiday, I try to do something that's a connector, that's either a connector through my travels, that's a connector through my life, that's a connector through the history that I studied about food. For the first night of Kwanzaa, I want to share with you one of the things that I will serve at some point during the holidays, not always on the first night. I wrote a cookbook called Iron Pots and Wooden Spoons, Africa's Gifts to New World Cooking. So I collect wooden spoons. Now, in this wooden spoon, I have some figs and some dates. And I have some figs and some dates because I spent many years traveling to Western Africa where people would celebrate not Kwanzaa, but Ramadan. And Ramadan can come at various times of the year. When Ramadan came late in the year, around the year end celebrations, people would break their fast. And I would always note that people broke their fast with dates and with figs and with milk. So frequently during the Kwanzaa period, I will serve my guests figs and dates and a little bit of milk to celebrate the change, to celebrate the fact that we are renewing things, to celebrate the fact that we are really thinking about ourselves in deeper and more profound ways than we do on a daily basis. So happy Kwanzaa. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.